Good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to the League's online national conference. This is the end. It's the last day, and it's been quite a ride, and we're gonna have a terrific afternoon. We have some wonderful, wonderful people to hear from. Valerie Coleman, our keynote speaker, our two representatives, our Gold Baton Award recipients are here. We've got a special guest to close out our conference, and also Afa Dworkin, the president of the Sphinx organization. So lots going on this afternoon. But first, we have a few preliminaries. So first of all, a big thank you to all of our sponsors and exhibitors for staying with us the past 6 weeks. Your help and participation is fantastic. Thank you. Also, remember not to leave Feedloop if you're in Feedloop, but if you do, just come right back in, it'll be fine. I also want to tell you that this session is being recorded, and you can go back, well, probably not tomorrow, I'm not sure when, but within a couple of days, this session will be back up on the Feedloop platform so you can see it. And then today, they're actually, I want to talk about two surveys. There's one where you can tell us what you think about this afternoon, but also be on the lookout for a survey for the whole conference, which will be coming your way very soon, and I think that'll show up in your email box is where you'll find that. So, a few more preliminaries. As you know, we had suspended our campaign, but I do want to thank all of you who have donated this year to Stronger Together, League Giving Days 2020. Gifts have come in every size. The campaign has now reached $162,169. That is nearly double last year's total. Hooray and thank you. Now, if you happen to be one of the very few 3,700 registrants at this point who has not made a contribution to League Giving Day, you still can. It's not too late. All you have to do is click on the Stronger Together button on the left side navigation panel in Feedloop, or visit americanorchestras.org/strongertogether. Also, I want to thank the Julian Family Foundation, who's been helping us successfully reach our campaign goal by committing a $35,000 for dollar match. Now, the good news is that we surpassed our $150,000 goal by our deadline. Even better, since we've not yet exhausted the available matching funds, the Julian family has generously allowed us to extend their match through June 30, 2020. So contributions still have double the impact. Your gift today supports our increasing commitment to add value to League membership and to provide essential new resources to orchestras. All support is welcomed. And I thank you for making a gift that's meaningful to you, as your generosity helps us all be stronger together. Now, this session is being generously sponsored by Acoustics, LLC. Acoustics specializes in acoustic design for concert and recital halls. Some of their notable projects include the Domena Center in New York City, renovations to the famed Cincinnati Music Hall, the Schermerhorn Symphony Center in Nashville, and the Ordway Center for the Performing Arts in St. Paul, which we would have been sitting in last night if we were able to hold our in-person meeting. And by the way, I've been in every one of those venues, and they are wonderful, extraordinary, and sound superb. Joining us today are Principals Christopher Blair, Paul Scarborough, and Russ Todd. Thank you, Acoustics, for your continued support of the League and its programming. Okay, now, I want to take a little bit of time just to reflect on this conference. We began this conference on May 5, 6 weeks ago. New York City had already become the epicenter of the global pandemic, and the new cases and deaths were still surging. The curve has now been bent downwards here, but in 22 other states, it's still going up, while worldwide, the pandemic continues to rage. On May 25th, George Floyd was viciously murdered by police officers in Minneapolis, setting off a profound reckoning with our country's persistent violence against Black men and women of all ages. Today would have been our final session in Minneapolis. Who could have imagined that several days ago, the Minnesota Orchestra would separate its ties to the Minneapolis police, and the city council days later would vote to dismantle the police department in its entirety? These twin crises, with both hitting people of color hardest and with pain and trauma that those of us who are white can barely imagine, have been the foreground of this conference. We entered the pandemic with fragile business models and a shameful record of racial discrimination. And now we're being called to account for the way we do business and the way we have failed to address systemic racism within our own field and within ourselves. I know from listening to many of your conversations and from our own conversations at the League that this time feels despairing. Rarely, if ever, have we felt so unsure of the future and so unclear about the steps to take to move forward. There's no denying that the future is uncertain and that the conditions that support our activities in their current form feel like they're slipping away. And there is hardship among the many in our community who've lost their jobs. But there are some things that give me hope and encouragement, and these are things actually that I've seen and heard during the course of this conference. And I want to share a few of them with you. The first is about a group that's been working together for the last 2 years to address structural barriers that early professional Black and Latinx musicians face as they work to enter American orchestras. I'm referring to the advisory committee of the National Alliance for Audition Support. We'll hear shortly from Afid Dworkin, president of Sphinx, about the great progress being made in that effort. But I'd like to share a bit about what's been going on in the advisory committee. From the point of its inception, this has been an effort that brought together managers and musicians, Black people, Latinx people, and white people to take on one of the most intractable problems in orchestras, namely the lack of racial and ethnic diversity on our stages. From the very outset, the leadership of the American Federation of Musicians, the International Congress of Symphony and Opera Musicians, and the Regional Orchestra Players Association joined with us to take on this important work that was incubated at League conferences in Baltimore and in Detroit. Our meetings were often fraught with debates about how far can we go? Can we take on the question of tenure? How do we tackle persistent implicit bias? And what about the audition process itself that increasingly seems so out of touch with the roles of today's orchestral musicians? I'm very pleased to report that this committee, that now happily also includes conductors, has set in motion 2 important working groups. One dedicated to establishing guidelines for equitable tenure practices, and the other for capturing the demographic data about who's auditioning and who's winning the jobs. As Damari McGill so eloquently said the other day when we had a meeting, how can you be serious about making change if you're not keeping track of what's going on? I'm reminded of Nina Simon's keynote from a few weeks ago when she gave us 3 important questions to ask. What do you choose to change? Who do you commit to involve? And what assets can you share? The NAS Advisory Committee is very clear about what it wants to change, and it has also been clear about involving a broad set of stakeholders with a range of lived experiences in a way that is pushed beyond the norms of decision-making in classical music. It's worked hard to knock down artificial role barriers, to unite a team in doing the hard work. It's been leveraging the assets of the 3 partner organizations, the League, New World Symphony, and Sphinx, together with all of our orchestras, and extending even further outward into the higher education community. This group is demonstrating that we can take on even the hardest issues and have the most difficult, important conversations when we purposefully invite a group that represents an array of lived experiences and expertise to the table. I've said earlier, but I'll say this again, that, I mean, who could not be stirred by the unending creativity we are seeing and hearing from the joyous and gifted musicians among us? They are irrepressible. Peter Pastreich, the legendary manager of the San Francisco Symphony, he was always very fond of pointing out that when an orchestra goes out of business, invariably a new one crops up, and it gets propped up because musicians want it to crop up. They're the ones who lead it back. They are the core of our work and a big part of how we'll figure out our way forward. But we're not going to find our way forward by looking in the rearview mirror. We're going to have to let go of many old habits and mindsets to be able to rebuild and to serve and to interact with our communities that are more inclusive and equitable. In our session on artistic leadership, Esa-Pekka Salonen asked that we begin by determining the creative and expressive work that must be done, and also to see that the expansive dedication to inclusion brings vibrancy and relevance. And with those imperatives in mind, then we reimagine how we will organize our work and our organizations. There is good news in that we're being clearly taught by our environment how to let go of old habits and reorganize ourselves to be stronger and healthier. It's hard not to notice the readiness of our community to come together to find the many paths forward. 3,700 people have registered for this conference, almost now 4 times our usual participation. We've seen increases in all categories, but especially among musicians, our small budget orchestras, our youth orchestras, and our trustees. And the peer group meetings have been overflowing with robust attendance and intense conversation. I've been hearing a great deal of vulnerability in these meetings, and I don't think I need to tell any of you that that's where leadership begins. Like you, the League is reimagining its work, learning from this experience so that we can be with you and for you in the months ahead. And again, I want to celebrate the League staff that has demonstrated its adaptability, its flexibility, creativity, innovative thinking, and just plain old hard work in mounting this conference. And this would be a moment when I'd ask everyone to stand, we would all cheer. So I will assume everyone is cheering and the League is smiling and beaming. Okay. So our reorganization must include a focus on becoming anti-racist. I can say unequivocally that orchestras must take action to make change in their organizations and in their communities. We have to acknowledge our personal and organizational racism and commit to transforming our field into a space that is actively anti-racist. We have to continue to truly work to understand the harm we've caused and to take action to end the harm that is ongoing. And we must actively and diligently listen to and validate the experiences of our Black, Indigenous people of color, patrons, colleagues, and neighbors, and we must commit to taking action to share the power and the advantage that comes with whiteness. Saying we are sorry is not enough. We must be specific and intentional about our actions. Some of the clearest guidance on this work has come from 2 members of the League board during our session on anti-Black discrimination in American orchestras. If you'll allow me, and with the permission of those members, I'd like to close by reprising them here. This is from Aaron Flagg. 8 ways to combat anti-Black racism. Center the people who are being harmed to understand and work from their perspective. Learn the history of systemic discrimination to be able to empathize with Black people. Grow your awareness of words, behavior, assumptions, and processes that communicate racism, beliefs of superiority or inferiority. Stay open to new perspectives on the familiar to remain vulnerable and tolerant. Find your own way to stand up against racism in your life, your community, your organization, and our country. Be an ally, increase the number of allies, and support them. Embrace discomfort and demonstrate a deep, unwavering commitment to the goals of equity and inclusion. Develop mechanisms to keep yourself accountable, educated, and sensitive to the journey of others. That was from Aaron. And this final comment comes from Daniel Bernard Romain in the same session, and it was in response to a question about how to lead when the leadership in your organization won't. And this is what Daniel said. He said, "Do not give up. Now is not yesterday. I dare say you might be better heard today, but be quick, because tomorrow the moral amnesia will set in for us all. Be polite, but persistent. Rally, expose, prod, push, embrace, demand, challenge, shame carefully, but just do one thing. Don't stop. That's what I wanted to share with you before we jump into our official printed program. And to take us forward, it's my great pleasure to introduce my colleague and friend and president of the Sphinx organization, Afa Dworkin.
Thank you so much, Jesse, for this wonderful address and your stirring comments. It is an honor to be here with 37 other fellow musicians, artists, community leaders, and those who understand the power of the arts, and particularly the power and impact of American orchestras. I'm here to share just a bit about the work of the National Alliance for Audition Support, an alliance that Jesse spoke of. This is a program that is unprecedented in its nature. It is a national initiative to increase diversity in American orchestras. NAS, as we affectionately refer to it, offers Black and Latinx musicians a customized combination of mentoring, audition preparation, financial support, and audition previews. NAS is made up of not only the Sphinx organization and its lead institution and fiscal agent, but also importantly, the New World Symphony, America's Orchestral Academy, and of course, the League of American Orchestras, which has been instrumental behind getting so many orchestras on board with this work. It has been launched with the support from the Mellon Foundation, whom we thank ardently for their dedication to this work over the course of many decades. This is a unique collaboration not only between 3 lead organizations, but also a group of Black and Latinx musicians of American orchestras who comprise the Artists Council. I want to thank them for their leadership, for their guidance and participation, as well as patience as we do this work together. It also involves partnership and contribution from 77 American orchestras, as well as both AFFM, ICSOM, and ROPA. We couldn't do the work that we do without contribution from all of these entities and individuals. I also want to extend a word of thanks to 2 people on my team who lead this work, and that is Bill Neary and Andre Dowell, both of whom are professional musicians, leaders in the field, who have been instrumental in not only looking at this problem, but figuring out schemes and ways to really administer this work, and importantly, work with each individual recipient of these grants and musicians with whom we work to truly understand their concerns, the barriers that they face, and the manners in which we can best empower them. And now on to a few numbers, just to share the work that we've been doing together with many of you. Since our launch in 2018, 24 artists have won auditions and or placements with American orchestras. These ensembles include the Louisville Orchestra, the Nashville Symphony, Seattle Symphony, Sarasota, and many others. Recognizing the need for lasting support for orchestra track musicians, 77 members of the League contribute financially to partner with NAS, but more importantly, contribute their thought, their guidance, and their constructive feedback as to how we can really augment the impact and ultimately see to it that our orchestras begin to be more and more reflective of the communities in which we reside. I want to thank all of the member orchestras, which really range in terms of their groups, but they include San Francisco Symphony, Minnesota Orchestra, New York Philharmonic, Detroit Symphony, Louisville Orchestra, and so many others. Overall, NAS has supported 138 Black and Latinx musicians from all over the country. We support our artists not only financially in an effort to help them pursue opportunities, but also through coachings, mentorship, and other support. Nearly 300,000 now in financial support alone have been awarded to musicians since the inception, through 222 audition grants, 43 substitute musician grants, and 50 instrument grants. In both 2018 and 2019, 68 artists participated in our 5 live audition intensive, which are held by, administered, and conceived by the New World Symphony. This year's audition intensive, which began on June 5th, will provide nearly 70 artists an opportunity to participate in over a dozen distance learning sessions, private lessons, recorded mock auditions, and so forth. Prior to 2020 to this year, more than half, 56% of these participants have never had an experience in distance learning or instruction this way. An additional 12 musicians were placed on sublists with major orchestras, or 1 fellowship positions with orchestras who hold them. 5 musicians this past year alone won 1-year contracts with orchestras. So we've made, needless to say, we've made notable progress. However, we've got a long way to go. We can only go there together. We are stronger together, as the theme says. In terms of a look ahead, we're working to pivot the audition, tenure, and promotion sphere. There is an advisory committee that's looking at those very processes and wondering if this challenging and transformative time in our country is a time for us to also reimagine the circumstances under which we are empowering Black and Brown musicians and helping our orchestras become more excellent by becoming more reflective. And finally, a word and a call to join us. By the end of our pilot period, which is in 1.5 years, our goal is to have at least 150 orchestral partners. We are at 77. I urge you to learn about the program. Drop me a line, talk to any of us, any members of the Alliance. We'd love to tell you more about it. This work continues to evolve itself, particularly in the wake of not only the pandemic, but the other epidemic that's been plaguing our country without a vaccine or a solution. We are looking at these challenging times. We're looking at our artists and musicians to help us navigate and pilot this work. And we certainly would greatly appreciate the input, the support, thoughts and ideas, and partnership from our member orchestras. So let's get to 150 together. Our ultimate goal is to help our orchestras reflect our communities and support the musicians for promoting excellence and diversity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being with us. Thank you for telling everyone the terrific progress that we're making, and we're grateful and honored to be in partnership with you in this terrific program, as well as with the New World Symphony. So thank you, Afa.
That's my honor.
We're going to turn now to a couple other chapters in this afternoon, and I want to talk about our emerging leaders. And you know, the League's involvement in leadership development and finding and training managers goes all the way back to the 1950s. And Peter Pastrak, who I mentioned a little while ago, he got his start in this business from taking what was called the Orchestra Management Seminar. And my dad, in fact, also got his start in this business from taking the Orchestra Management Seminar. Both of them were tutored by Helen Thompson, who was the iconic leader of the League. And so anyway, but a lot's evolved over time. And what started out as the Orchestra Management Seminar has evolved in a million different ways, including what had been the Orchestra Management Fellowship Program, which now has evolved into the Emerging Leaders Program. And I see that my little notes are covered up by the screen. So hang on a second here. Okay, there we go. So this program offers a powerful curriculum to cultivate and strengthen the capabilities of high potential orchestra professionals. It offers focused one-to-one coaching, mentoring, in-depth seminars led by leadership experts, and site visits with leaders and institutions from outside the orchestra field. It has a terrific faculty, which is led by John McCann, who I know is well known to many of you. The program lasts 8 months, and every year we have a new class, and we now hit the graduation, if you will, of the class of 2020. And under normal circumstances, I'd be asking them to stand, and we would all give them a big cheer. And alas, that's not possible. But let's take a minute to see them on this brief slideshow that we're going to find our way through. Okay, so here we have Catherine. Catherine, congratulations. And, you know, I can't see. I got to get my screen bigger. Hang on. Come back. Okay. Apologies, especially to Karina, but thank you and congratulations on this year. Okay, and Robin, thank you and congratulations and 3 cheers. And JT, nice to see you again and congratulations to you. And Giuliano, great to see you. Great smile, onwards. And Rachel, congratulations. And Monica, even seeing you on the screen is really nice, but I wish we were really all together. Brian, great to see you again. And Andrew, congratulations to you. And Ignacio, wonderful to see you, even as a photo. Look forward to seeing you in real life. And congratulations. And Sarah, it's great working with you on the Women's Festival last fall, and congratulations. Bye-bye. And Leah, congratulations to you. Great to see you. And Michelle, congratulations to you too. And there you have it, the class of 2020 of our emerging leaders. Big cheers all around. Okay, now we're going to turn to our Gold Baton. The Gold Baton Award has been given annually since 1948 for distinguished service to America's orchestras. It recognizes individuals and institutions whose far-reaching contributions to the field serve to champion and advance the cause of orchestras and symphonic music throughout the country. This year, we make the award to two extraordinary organizations devoted to supporting America's composers. And I'm going to say a bit about each in a moment, but let me first say why we value the work of both of them so much. You know, let's face it, for decades, we neglected American composers. Our whole apparatus of performance was predicated on playing music by dead European male composers. And we sure seemed to like it that way. There was no sign of much desire to change. It's a really good thing that the American Composers Forum and New Music USA came on the scene. Without them, composers would have had no viable means of support. And while we were busy playing our canon, they were busy making sure that composers received professional development, grants, advocacy, mentorships, networks, recordings, and commissions. And it's a good thing that they did all of that, because when orchestras finally began to wake up, there would not otherwise have been any composers to play. And the truth is, it's not like we actually woke up. We got woken up by these two organizations. They figured out that we really needed composers, and they were ingenious in devising ways to help orchestras to see the centrality of composers to their work. Today, orchestras are coming to understand the drive toward relevance and inclusion begins with the creative voice of our nation's composers. And we have American Composers Forum and New Music USA for helping us get there. American Composers Forum was founded in 1973, actually organized in 1973, as a group of students at the University of Minnesota, and it was led by Libby Larson and Stephen Paulus for the purpose of creating performance opportunities outside the academic setting. Imagine that, performance opportunities outside the academic setting. It was a very radical idea at the time. In the bad old days, the only way to make a living as a composer was in academia, and that wasn't exactly a gravy train. But Libby and Steve had a very different idea, and it was a powerful one. And it started out as the Minnesota Composers Forum, but its mission was too bold to be contained in a single state. Under the visionary leadership of Linda Heschler, it became the American Composers Forum. And with that name change came a slew of national initiatives. Many of us are familiar with Continental Harmony, a nationwide commissioning program involving dozens and dozens of orchestras. Among its more singular historical programming was the First Nations Composer Initiative from 2004 to 2010. And that supported the unique needs of Native American composers and performers. Over the course of 4 decades, the American Composers Forum has nurtured the work of thousands of composers. Their Innova recording label has released over 600 titles, and their Band Quest and Choral Quest series for middle-level students has reached over 500,000 students. New programs like ACF Connect offer different connections, direct connections, and commissions with leading national ensembles. Following 15 years of distinguished leadership from President John Nectarline, John handed the reins over to Vanessa Rose. And Vanessa, like her predecessors, is already carving out a new and exciting direction for American Composers Forum. I'm going to invite Vanessa to speak in a moment, but before that, let's take a look at this video about ACF.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Rose, President and CEO of the American Composers Forum. This is our office in downtown St. Paul, Minnesota, not far from where we were founded in 1973. As we've grown to be a national organization, it has remained important to us that we do this work from our home in the center of the country, recognizing the many artistic communities around this nation and the power of music within them. Recent events that have highlighted systemic racism in our cities and the country have made that ever more important. Our mission is to illuminate and amplify the relevance and vitality of today's music by supporting and advocating for the individuals creating music and their art. If you are watching this, you are part of our shared ecosystem, and we invite you to envision the many ways you can collaborate with living composers or create yourself, especially in and reflective of your own diverse communities. Some examples. Through our fellowship programs, we've enabled artists to build residency programs with a high school in South Minneapolis, a homeless encampment, a women's prison, as well as the city of Wilmar, Minnesota. The act of creating music together and highlighting the stories of individuals from those communities validated their experiences and elevated the music itself. Our fellowships have also seeded the development of new work and provided the opportunity for mid-career artists to have time to focus on their art making. Our middle school band and choral commissioning and residency programs are enabling young people across the country to create music with a composer, and for some, with a person who is the same underrepresented race as them. Each of these pieces are published along with a free curriculum guide for other youth programs. Recently, we co-presented the AACM's Great Black Music Ensemble with the Cedar Cultural Center and the Schubert Club here in Minneapolis, attracting one of the most diverse audiences I've ever seen in race, age, socioeconomic status, musical background. The Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, or AACM, is our partner this year for our ACF Connect program, which has enabled them to identify and commission 3 artists through an open call for scores. For their collaboration this year, they will premiere the pieces in their hometown of Chicago, both in a concert hall and as part of their monthly program at the Stony Island Arts Bank in the south side of Chicago, reaching different audiences and communities. Through Innova, our longtime record label, and many partnerships with digital media, distributors, presenters, educators, performers, and advocates, we are providing a platform for artists to be heard and an invitation for audiences to listen. Our commitment to being a racially equitable organization guides our work. We intentionally learn and practice how to be anti-racist and lead an ecosystem that is equitable as well as inclusive. We support generations of artists through connection and resources, and we invite music lovers like you to be curious listeners. We can all discover new perspectives and connect as humans through that love of music. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. If we were in St. Paul at our conference, I'd be asking you to come up here and I would hand you our Gold Baton Award. And people would take pictures and we'd have hugs and kisses and it would be wonderful. But alas, we have to do this virtually. So let me just invite you, having share the wonderful video to share a few more words with us.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, the League. It's my pleasure to join you all today and gratefully accept this award on behalf of the American Composers Forum's board, staff, founders, and the many composers, artists, and advocates who contributed to us being here today. A special note, I want to acknowledge again our founders, Libby Larson and Stephen Paulus, as well as my immediate predecessors, John Nichterlein and Linda Heschler. I think Libby and John are watching now and would certainly have joined me in person as well. In our original form as the Minnesota Composers Forum, the mission was to provide a platform and an audience for the creation and performance of new music composed by Minnesota composers. As we have evolved to support artists around the country using a broad definition of the term American, we continue to develop a platform to amplify both the music being created today and the artists themselves. And we strive to cultivate curious listeners like you to experience the music of our time. I've been honored to lead ACF over the past year and a half as part of this creative ecosystem, and accepting this award in front of an audience of mentors, colleagues, and friends is also personally significant. I trained as a classical violinist and sought a career as an orchestral musician, but it was my first internship and later full-time position at the League that catalyzed my move to administration. The life-changing experience of being an orchestra management fellow 15 years ago was a foundation for the leader I am today. When I moved from New York to Minneapolis last year, I could not have foreseen the magnitude of being in the city at this time. To see how our artistic community has responded and galvanized action in the spirit of our city's protests and calls for systemic reform make me proud. This can be a tipping point for our country and our field, and I appreciate the comments you shared with us at the beginning of the session, Jesse. We've created, followed, and probably questioned the various responses to this movement. And as you look inside your orchestras to enact greater racial equity, I ask that you consider context. The music we play reflects any commitment to demonstrating that Black lives matter. And the beauty of programming works by living composers is that they're alive, and each creator has a unique story and a unique journey. When you program a living composer, you are collaborating with that person as well as their music. Together, the orchestra and composer design a musical experience for performers and listeners alike, and done well, can engage a truly diverse audience. The commission and premiere at the beginning is, of course, a very special experience, but it's the second, third, and fourth performances that support a composer's livelihood. So I invite you to join me in asking, whose music are we missing out on? The most recent data I have found is from the Institute for Composer Diversity, which looked at 120 orchestra programs this past season. 16% of the pieces included were by living composers. Only 6% of those were from underrepresented race, ethnicity, culture, or heritage. So as we've done for many years, let's work together. At our convening last September, some of you attended or streamed, we heard music creators leading conversations with other artistic leaders of orchestras, venues, media, ensembles, and schools. Know that you are not alone. Our ecosystem thrives because of the diversity of people and the forms of music they create and perform. We have the people sharing this session with me, as well as many amazing Black artists and BIPOC-led organizations in our field. And it's because of this kind of deep investment in artists, as well as the partnerships like orchestras to share their music, that ACF exists today. Thank you again to the League of American Orchestras board and staff for this award. Congratulations to my co-superwoman, Vanessa Reed, and New Music USA. I'm Vanessa Rose, by the way, we get confused too. I gratefully acknowledge the League's support of ACF, New Music USA, the Sphinx organization, and the artists like today's featured speaker, Valerie Coleman, and so many others who share my love for orchestras. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Your leadership is inspirational. Thank you for challenging us, and thank you for being with us this afternoon. You guys are doing great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse.
Okay. All right. Now, New Music USA. They were formed in 2011, and they came together out of the merger between two other organizations, Meet the Composer and the American Music Center. And Meet the Composer was also founded on a radical idea. Their idea was that composers can not only make a living out of academia, but they could also make extraordinary contributions to the lives of communities and to performing arts organizations. John Duffy, a professional boxer turned composer, founded Meet the Composer in 1974. And under his visionary leadership, Meet the Composer awarded countless commissions and residencies to composers of all kinds of genres. Orchestras were the beneficiary of Meet the Composer's work through its landmark orchestra residency program sponsored by Exxon Corporation and the National Endowment for the Arts, and its successor program, Music Alive, implemented in partnership with the League. From that initial residency program, composers like Ellen Swillick, John Tower, Joe Schwantner, John Harbison, Roberto Sierra, Jake Druckman, Shulamit Ron, Alvin Singleton, and many others were introduced to orchestras in 3-year residencies. And the Music Alive program, in its 20 years, supported 110 composers, 76 orchestras, and 114 distinct residencies. The American Music Center, half of the what got merged, they were founded in 1939 by Aaron Copland, Howard Hanson, Otto Luning, and a few others. And that was dedicated to building a national community of artists, organizations, and audiences, creating, performing, and enjoying new American music. Over the years, it created programs to commission, perform, and record new American orchestral works. In 1990, 1999, the American Music Center launched the web magazine New Music Box, which has absolutely become the place to go for important conversations about music today. There's a wonderful quote about it from composer and percussionist Robert Patterson. If contemporary American music is the fabric of what we do, then New Music Box is the seam that binds us together. Today, New Music USA provides financial support through project grants, fosters new connections, and advocates for the field. New Music USA works in collaboration with its community in response to unaddressed needs and amplifies the diverse voices of music creators. New Music USA envisions a thriving and equitable ecosystem for new music throughout the United States. Vanessa Rose gave away my joke. I was about to say that, you know, the fun fact about composer associations, in order to lead one, your name has to be Vanessa. And in fact, both of these wonderful organizations are led by Vanessas. And New Music USA is led by Vanessa Reed. And before we hear from her, though, let's take a look at this brief video.
I am that I am that I am that I am who I am that I am that I am that I am who. Being the composer in residence with this orchestra has given and taught me so much. First of all, it reminds me of the extraordinary skill of these musicians. And in addition, the extraordinary love they have for all music. There are many musicians in this band that play in salsa groups, play in jazz groups. So the paradigm of what is called classical music is something that is in flux now too, as it should be.
It's always been a goal of mine to champion composers that speak to experiences of today, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's a goal to offer opportunities to composers that look like me and give them a platform to compose openly and freely with limited parameters, thinking beyond concert openers and bringing unique color and life to the ever-growing musical canon, an opportunity to offer my audiences diverse perspectives.
Here in Atlanta, the home of the civil rights movement, the importance of featuring musicians of color in our programs is hard to overestimate.
New Music USA, when they put their weight behind my approach and my vocabulary, my musical vocabulary, that really helped me tremendously become part of the conversation.
I am extremely excited to be working with the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra and writing my very first large-scale work that I get to really deep dive into and work on over a long period of time, and that in the orchestral world and just in my relationship to writing music is such a rare thing, and I am so grateful and so excited to be a part of this whole program. There's so many other beautiful, bright, shining voices that haven't been heard yet, and it is so important that we start finding ways that we can hear them.
Wow. Vanessa Reed, there you are, unmuted.
Hi.
Welcome. Thank you for that terrific video. And as I said to Vanessa Rose, I am metaphorically handing you the League's Gold Baton. And I learned this morning it's in the mail, so the actual thing is on its way. It'll be there soon. So I'm sorry we can't do better virtually, but here we are. So welcome, and let's hear from you now.
Thank you so much, Jesse. It really is a huge honor to be accepting this award on behalf of New Music USA's board and staff from past and present, our program council, and everyone who's been involved with this very special organization. And I also love the fact that, you know, I'm receiving this award alongside our sister organization, American Composers Forum, and Vanessa Rose. So congratulations, Vanessa and ACF as well. New Music USA supports the creation, performance and appreciation of new music through our work as advocate for the field, through a growing number of grant-making programs, and through our media platform, New Music Box, which Jesse was just talking about. And we were founded in 2011 through the merger of Meet the Composer and American Music Center. When I moved to New York last August to take up this leadership role at New Music USA, I was really inspired by the extraordinary commitment this organization has made over the years to supporting long-term relationships between composers and orchestras. So that's why the film that we had a lot of fun putting together for today's award really focuses specifically on this work, which positions new music at the heart of orchestral life. As you heard again from Jesse, our Music Alive program was launched in 1999 by one of our founding organizations, Meet the Composer, in partnership with the League of American Orchestras. And across 2 decades, it supported hundreds of composer residencies in orchestras of all sizes across the United States. And thanks to support from the Mellon Foundation, this program demonstrated the vital role of living composers in extending the art of symphonic music and its relationship to the orchestra's community. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who made this critical work happen. John Duffy and Fran Richards, who actually received a Gold Baton for their work on the Composer Residency Program in 1992. To Ed Harsh, my predecessor, Scott Winship from our current staff who worked very hard on this program, and thanks also to you, Jesse, for being a partner, and to Susan Fader, who supported us all along. This work changed the lives of many composers, as you saw from Derek Spiver's comment in the film, and it created many new opportunities for orchestras and their audiences. We're now building on this deep collaboration because we know there's so much more work to do, and we're now focusing on how repertoire created by living composers, and particularly composers of color, could feature more regularly at the heart of main stage concert programs. One of the ways we're approaching this is through the Amplifying Voices program we launched in January with support from Spinks Organization's Venture Fund. And this is supporting and connecting 6 consortia of orchestras who are committed to co-commissioning Black and Latinx composers and working with these composers to program repertoire, past and present, that has previously been omitted from major concert programs. And Vanessa shared the statistics earlier that are so crucial to the context of this program. This is just one small step we've been taking in our commitment towards an equitable ecosystem for new music, and we hope that it will start transforming the canon of new orchestral music for future generations. The orchestras you heard about in the film are still in the process of forming their consortia. So for any orchestra representatives who are watching this session now, I really urge you to join in. This is one concrete way to be part of a really exciting commissioning process, whilst also taking part in collective action towards a more open and inclusive future for orchestral music. And I know that that's a change we all want to be part of. There's also a link in the chat box for more information on the program, and please have a look at our website for information on all the other programs we're running. And we really welcome your ideas, suggestions, provocations, and questions. Thanks again to the League for this distinguished award. And last but not least, I want to say a big thank you to my current team and board at New Music USA for working with me on the next chapters of New Music USA's story. I really appreciate your support and collaboration. Thank you.
Vanessa, thanks so much for being with us. Thanks for your tremendous leadership and wonderful partnership with the League and with our whole community of orchestras. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So into the home stretch, and I'm introducing you, for those of you who don't know, to Valerie Coleman. Valerie has one of those biographies. It's about 3 miles long, and it just makes me. One person shouldn't get to be so good at so many different things. I mean, she's a flutist, she's a composer, she's the founder and co-artistic director of Grammy Award-winning Imani Winds. She's an educator, and she's brilliant at everything. I mean, hooray. Good for you, Valerie. You know, the last piece of hers I heard was an American Composers Orchestra concert about 1.5 years ago. It was Phenomenal Woman, the piece drawn from Maya Angelou's poem and book, and it just kind of blew the roof off. It's a sensational piece. So Valerie, thank you for being with us this afternoon. Welcome, and over to you.
It is with such gratitude to the League of American Orchestras for the honor of being with you at the close of Global Stages Local Stories. I was struck by the ethos of this conference, which speaks directly to the humanity at the heart of our collective work in the world of music. Just as important is the adaptability that the League has shown to serve the arts community in the midst of this pandemic. As artists, we begin our process from within, journeying through the landscape of local stories that profoundly show intimate relationship between composer and performer. We see the kindness, the goodness, the harshness and cruelty in the world, but we also know that music has the unique advantage of transforming all that can seem far away, abstract, and global to what is emotionally nearby, proximate in the immediate human, no, rather humane moment. Global Stages, Local Stories reflects the thoughtfulness, humanity, and care that was put into a brilliant lineup of enlightening and informative array of speakers, thinkers, innovators, educators, and I would even say musical caregivers, which is a term that I do not give lightly in our current situation. At this time in the world, we musical caregivers are entrusted with the work of organizing sound, exposing aspects of our souls into shared feeling. It is our expressive gestures that can move the listener to feel, which they may have otherwise have become numb, or as of yet have been unable to feel. Or we may simply meet them in their own humanity by evoking their most familiar feelings. I've always maintained that musical compositions are their own living entities. They unfold themselves like children, and they have personalities that you could have not have predicted. They don't eat or have physical presence, but yet they breathe and have meaning and full of life. The impact that they make on others is what makes them into living beings unto themselves. The symphonic community has the power to open a new chamber of the human heart where compassion and empathy may emerge. I also see musical caregiving as a creative sense of well-being in a person, creating unity and even creating love. This is a process that is a very positive force within itself, and when there is love communicated through music and it radiates out both locally and globally, it has the potential to change lives. Now, 2020 has shown itself to be a year that aggressively confronts our collective humanity. Artists and organizations are being asked to know decisively upon which path we walk. These times put into sharp relief what is manufactured by our value systems and challenges us to venture untethered away from them. With hard work, we just might receive the abundant blessing of change, the kind of transformation that so many of us have dreamed of and have longed for and have fought for. Through this time, social isolation has become something of a sacred space of transformation for me. While creating, I've also been working through the concepts and ideas of what it means to be a women composer of color, and that has made me take a hard look at what my true responsibilities are. But more than ever, it is clear that it is a job, it's a creator's job to record the times, to shed light on unspoken history, and hopefully bridge gaps between differences of opinion, and do so in a way that can be received with openness. But composers, we can be a very dangerous sort. We record the times, we create new histories, we interpret what is happening and put it into music. That's what we're wired to do. So this is a very exciting time for women composers. I've come to understand that our belated acceptance into the world scene has never been about equality or creativity. Women composers bring a certain instinctual thing that is unique onto ourselves. We have a different message, and the world is finally ready and taking an interest in what we have to say. Perhaps it's the depth of our intuitive ability, our nature, that is needed now more than ever. Of course, there is that hill to climb, and I, for one, am happy to take on that challenge. Current events, they're giving us a charge to the angst we fuel, but that for sure needs a release. I know it's not just for me, but it's for artists around the world. And when we in mass start to address humanity and the nature of morality from the darkest to the lightest, it illuminates a truth. What nourishes the arts will nourish the audience as well. This is how we, as artists of all kinds, are pushing humanity forward and indeed expressing from the depths of our souls. But at the end of the day, our compassion, our empathy, that may be the most human quality we possess. Yes, in hearing things in the news, that feeling of helplessness sits in. However, I know this. We as artists, we are not helpless. We have a gift of being able to reframe the optic. My own writings often examine the lives of those who have dealt with struggles, both internal and external, which get in the way of personal progress. What stands out to me, however, is how that struggle is handled with grace. They have figured out through their own determination how not to only persevere through, but to thrive. Now, I wrote Phenomenal Women, which is a symphonic work celebrating American women who are icons. And it was written for American Composers Orchestra, and I've just learned that it is scheduled for Orpheus Chamber Orchestra's upcoming season. And, you know, these women, they have changed the fabric of the way we look at and perceive life. It honors Maya Angelou, Olympic gold medalist from Flint, Michigan, Clarissa Shields, Michelle Obama, mathematician Katherine Johnson, and Serena Williams. But in the midst of these amazing women, I felt called to dedicate one of the movements to the mothers of the caravan. The fact that the caravan had children and mothers really hit a note for me, being a parent myself. As a mother, I can't imagine being separated from my young daughter. As they took the journey north that ultimately engaged so many children and adults at our southern border, I needed to acknowledge their phenomenal strength and endurance as they held the vision and prayer for a better life for their children. We should remember them and never become desensitized to their struggles. In 7 o'clock shout, essential workers of all kinds are honored. In my heart was the feeling of the work that so many souls undertook to meet the intense challenge of the coronavirus as the pandemic descended upon us. It's about everyone 7 p.m. cheering everywhere in gratitude and in celebrating our humanity one day at a time. Those who survived and those who did not, they have one thing in common. They each held a vision of a world beyond this virus. And they fought with all they had for that vision, for themselves, for their families, and for the world. That is what figures hugely into what I composed in 7 O'Clock Shout, which, by the way, was just performed by the Philadelphia Orchestra in its virtual formation as a premiere. And even as I created a meditation on loss, the music clearly showed me where it needed to go, towards a generative story of healers of all kinds who keep the world standing right side up. When you see those things happening around you as an artist, it is a different kind of fuel. What began as anger at the stunning amount of loss in this moment, we turn it to love. We acknowledge all the physical caregivers who are keeping us alive, and we acknowledge our own survival. Every crucial player, sanitation crews, medical teams, every one of them, without them, where would we be? But now, I cannot go any further without expressing my immeasurable thanks to Maestro Yannick Nézet-Séguin and in the inspired, amazing, and dare I may say, anointed Philadelphia Orchestra family. You are phenomenal musicians, and you changed my life. I am blessed to have completed 2 commissions by them. My gratitude goes far beyond whatever words can express. The feeling I feel is of absolute wonder that I have in this moment, having just heard that gorgeous and heartfelt performance of a creation that I consider to be newborn. My own musical relationship to music began in the womb. When my mother was carrying me, she would play a recording of Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, her favorite, and she did it every single day. Clearly, she knew I was in there listening. As a small child, I created my own music as a part of playtime with the very advanced technical aid of 2 cassette players and a cheap electric keyboard with organ sounds. The product of looping back and forth ended up being distorted melodies that could have been the soundtrack to a horror movie, but to me, it was the greatest piece of music ever written. That automatic instinct to create was pretty much already there, and I believe wholeheartedly, it is a gift that all children share. I actually began composing music before I learned how to write it. So it must have been around 6 or 7 years old when it started to come to me that it came to the fore, this idea of creative, productive work. It's always been there long before I learned how to play the flute. Now, my father passed away when I was 9 years old, and truthfully, I credit my mother to not only allowing, but for always encouraging my creative unfolding as a healing, while at the same time guiding me through the complex inner city world of Louisville, Kentucky. Even though West Louisville is considered among the poorest zip codes in the nation, it is a proud and sanctified place, as I came from the very same neighborhood as Muhammad Ali. By age 11, I had learned to notate music and was already playing the flute. I made myself busy writing symphonies, which even received their own local performances and acclaim, or at least in my mind. I guess you could safely say that it's not your typical little kid's existence. In that neighborhood, my mother is running and has run a daycare, and it's now going on for 60 years. I witnessed her caring and loving and coaxing the next generations into lives full of meaning by nurturing those children's imagination. Of course, that is what she gave to me too in great abundance. She saw me and my sisters through in every step of growing up. And while she quietly communicated to me that it is the force of my nature that will always be the prime mover of change, she made sure that she walked the talk. And I have lived by that ever since. I guess another way of saying this, if you see something important and you feel it in your heart, you can feel it in your heart, get busy, make it happen. Growing up, I remember sitting in the backyard watching the sun go down every single evening while listening to the radio play music, orchestral music. And I said to myself, one day people will play my music all around the world in orchestras. And here we are today with the Philadelphia Orchestra's performance of my new piece, 7 O'Clock Shout, still ringing in the air. Wow. But of course, it's been a long journey to get to this point. As a young flutist, I took advantage of every opportunity that I could to play in ensembles and youth orchestras. Oh man, I loved it. Playing and performing with large groups of kids from other parts of Louisville was truly home to me. But as a result of the transformative summer at Boston University Tanglewood Institute, I got my mother's blessing and packed up and moved to Boston to study at Boston University. It was exciting, but to be truthful, it was quite a culture shock. Music making for me has always been a world full of kids of every hue, black, brown, white. Everyone was together. In Boston, it was a completely different story, but my love for orchestral music and chamber music was what gave me substance. I finished my double degree in flute performance, music composition, and theory simultaneously while learning a great deal about the musical ecosystem that I found myself in. There, as a musician, I thrived in my years of study, but I've always lived with a keen sense of musical homesickness growing up. So when I got to New York to pursue my graduate degree with Judy Mendenhall at Mannes, the New School University, I was giving my future in performing a very, very close look, and I wondered how was I going to pay the bills. A part of me knew that I had to tend to what I felt was missing in not only in my musical world, but also building a professional career. So we always hear necessity is the mother of invention. I've lived it a bit differently. In my case, necessity has been the taskmaster of invention. Maybe another way of saying this is I was a young woman full of ideas, but I knew that no one was going to make my ideas a reality. I could not wait around for that, and that it would take truly rolling up my sleeves to realize any visions. I learned a lesson that I hold sacred, and I want to pass on to you. It takes vision, hard work, faith, patience, and persistence to knock down those doors. Back then, in the 90s, chamber music was a career path taken by string players, as we know, but there was not yet a full-time woodwind quintet in the world. You know, that is something that was unheard of. But I believe as long as you have a plan and as long as you have a mission, a directive, a style, a strong personal interest in introducing music that is unique to your voice as an artist, there will always be a place for you in the field. It was and is only a matter of time, and you have to work hard at it and just wait. But I believe that if you have courage and faith in what you endeavor and you put it out there, life has a way of attracting the right people into your sphere in a way that you could not even have planned. I've always been amazed by serendipity, and I dare say providence, that comes in play in such a beautiful way. These are the moments that you feel the real faith in the process, and it keeps you striving onward. With all of that in mind, I could see my vision for my way through, so I got on the phone. And just like a telemarketer for a day, I cold called some of the most inspiring musicians, freelancers in New York City, and they happened to be African American. And that fueled me even further. I asked them if they would be interested in sitting down and reading, and forming possibly a quintet with me. And I asked them questions like, who do you look to for inspiration? Who are your role models? And I wondered if our shared cultural experience would lend itself to interpreting music in a different way. Thus, Imani Winds was born, and I started writing for the group. And I would say that that is where the true learning and the real journey began, in all of us getting together and creating different sounds. But for me, it's like being a cook in the kitchen. When somebody's hungry and you cook something, but you know the amount of love that goes into cooking for people you care about is just the same with the creative process. I always want to create music, that yummy dish for musicians that I'm writing for, and I want to create something that they'll enjoy playing. And I have to admit, I don't really write for myself. I never have. It's all about the sharing experience to making people around me better for the experience. And in being in the zone of writing and connecting with something that is greater than oneself, you get a taste of something that's huge. And of course, then you crave that feeling of always touching the divine. I did not know it at the time, but Imani Winds was, I guess, truly the start of fulfilling my childhood vision of having my music played on world stages. It was a journey that, as it unfolded, proved itself to be a pure expression of my soul. And it brought me so much unexpected bounties with colleagues that constantly challenged me to grow. Few of the brightest lights included a Grammy nomination, the opportunity to perform and record with such extraordinary luminaries in the field like Steve Coleman and Wayne Shorter, Chick Corea, the Brubeck Brothers, and so many others. But I have to admit that it wasn't until I retired from Imani Winds, after being in the group for 22 years, that my imposter syndrome began to quiet down due to recognition from an array of awards that came from my own career as a solo artist. These included most recently Classical Woman of the Year from Performance Today, being cited by the Washington Post as one of the top 35 women composers, and the Herb Alpert Award Ragdale Residency Prize. That made me take a pause. All of a sudden, I realized my accomplishments are the product of my mother, my aunties, my grandma, my great-grandma's courage and strength to survive. I know, too, that I am literally the product of my ancestors' wildest dreams. And this leads us up to today. At this daunting moment in America, where we have witnessed the demise of over 100,000 people, all of our lives are deeply touched by multiple crises. As we look around the world and we see how very hard we've been hit in the U.S., we are humbled and grateful to be here in a state of virtual togetherness. And yet, when we recognize who is hardest hit by the way things have unfolded in America, we know we all have so much work to do. We need to bring into being a world that makes life truly livable beyond just trying to survive. We need to move towards a real experience of thriving for us all. The focus on the road ahead should be what the world of live music performance will mean, and as always, necessity will indeed be the taskmaster of invention. We will need research, innovation, persistence, and a dogged belief that we are all equal, with a specific emphasis on all of us belonging to this future. We've now reached profound understanding that on physical, neurological, emotional, and spiritual levels, the arts generate healing. There is a powerful example of this that comes to mind in the form of a nonprofit that I've supported for a while and have witnessed its growth from the ground up. It is Crossing Point Arts, which brings the arts to survivors of human trafficking. They're doing their work because they know that healing from PTSD without the arts is next to impossible. And using their creativity and expression time and time again, survivors heal. So I have to ask, Can we afford to deny the value of the arts in our society? As Robert Battle, the director of Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, said, the arts nurture the positive imagination, and the imagination costs nothing. But if it's not used, it will cost everything. As I see it, the arts are as crucial as the air we breathe. For the future of orchestras and their devoted organizers, funders, and staff, the whole team, there is much to consider, as has been deeply explored throughout the course of this conference. At the crux of it is the enormously important question of what inclusivity truly means and what it can look like. We have a chance now. In this sacred space of isolation, we have a chance to rethink things as never before. It is well within reach, but we must be tireless in our efforts to achieve this goal. We are in this together, so we must all share the experience and responsibility, all of us, artists, audiences, stakeholders, and gatekeepers. I'm reminded of the seeds of imagination my mother planted in my heart, and I believe they apply to everyone in earshot. It is the force of nature that will always be the prime mover of change. We're being called to transform ourselves and the world around us to a better vision of what has been before. Now is our opportunity. In the crucible of this moment where the world is determining how to move forward, again, some substantial questions arise. Who do we want to be? And how do we want to express it? How can we reinvent ourselves so that the only choice for change to happen is for it to happen and that we never go backward again? Do we fully understand that we must reinvent ourselves? I think we must. Many things are being raised right now. The hope and jubilant sound of that 7 o'clock shout, but also our protest signs, our fists in the air, our voices, our cries for justice. This astonishing time of transformation is a confluence of love, anger, longing, determination, awakening, passion, and conviction. At last, people are understanding our collective power. We have become so individualized along our paths that social distancing almost seemed eerily normal. And on the flip side of that, we're now witnessing the worldwide response to a 400-year-old system that was devised to exploit, diminish, and destroy brilliant lives. But here we are, change in view. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Just as it was with my ancestors, I honor my path to help push the world forward with a fierce urgency for deep healing. If we demand of ourselves that we each do this work, and I begin to see that our wildest and most potent dreams are no longer beyond reach, utterly dazzling, beautiful.
Valerie, thank you so much for that. Just remarkable work and remarkable remarks. And I'm so glad that hundreds and hundreds of people in orchestras got to hear 7 o'clock shout and your comments. I'm so glad we've recorded them. There's so much you shared, your own reflections on the power of music and of art and your own incredible journey and your incredible spirit of optimism and taking us forward. So thank you. Enormous gratitude to you. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. We are now just about at the end, and I want to introduce you to a terrific friend and colleague, well known to some of you, and that is the principal oboe of the oboist of the Nashville Symphony, Titus Underwood, and he's going to tell you a little bit about a piece we're about to hear. When the piece is over, the conference is over. So once again, big thanks to all of you for joining us these past 6 weeks. Fill out your surveys, please do all of that. And thanks to all our sponsors and exhibitors. And that's all from me. So over to you, Titus, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jesse, and beautiful Valerie. That was absolutely inspiring. And I was also inspired by Imani Wynn's coming up myself. So thank you for that. Well, I wanted to end this with, we put together, I don't know if some of you've seen it, Lift Every Voice. It's a composition that was written it became the African-American national anthem for Black Americans. And we decided to, as a group, first, this came about as the pandemic hit and a lot of us were out of work. I reached out to a lot of my Black colleagues and I said, hey guys, let's do a piece. Let's just put together an ensemble. And it started out as a Strauss serenade. So that's why our setup is that way. And I said, how about we do, we show the younger Black students that, show representation there because we don't see ourselves represented that much. And orchestras to inspire orchestras and to inspire the young Black musicians to see all those beautiful players together, playing together the Strauss serenade. And in that meantime, I said, how about we do Lift Every Voice and Sing, an arrangement of it. So I reached out to my dear friend and amazing composer, Fred O, who's over Fred O Music. And I said, why don't you write us an arrangement of Lift Every Voice and Sing? So this was about a little bit over a month ago, I would say roughly about 2 months ago. So this was in the works before the protests happened and all these things happened. So we were about to release the Strauss about a week ago. And then a friend of mine, Anthony Pointher, who's also on the playing contrabassoon on there, he said, hey, Titus, maybe we should release the Lift Every Voice. And I said, that's a great idea because the timing couldn't be any better than to release that now. So I reached out to Fredo and I said, hey, it's already recorded because we already put all our files in the Dropbox. But then one morning I woke up and I spoke to my fiance and I said, hey, I have a vision for this. I think I want this to be an art presentation, not just us as, symphony musicians playing next to each other, but there's a message that needs to be heard with this. So then I started to put together pictures and I started to think about how I wanted this to translate the message that we wanted to get across, standing in solidarity with the people who had lost lives. And we wanted to send out a message as a group of Black musicians standing in solidarity. And also the beauty of Lift Every Voice, we wanted to use that because that is rooted in such a deep tradition within Black culture here in America. And also we wanted to represent at this time that we're in this pandemic that, orchestras have written, their solidarity statements and saying Black Lives Matter, but this challenges us to even move to substantial changes that bridges that gap to saying things with solidarity, but also corrective action, because this is taking our consciousness to a different place and also rooting us in that specificity of Black life here in America. That is not absent of us being in solidarity with other peoples of color and underrepresented groups, but we're anchoring ourselves in that specificity that we see that ourselves are shown in the orchestras and we in tenured and protected. And we see ourselves in the boardrooms and composers and we just want to make that statement to show that, hey, we're here to inspire. This is an uplifting message. So I want to leave you with some of the lyrics of Lift Every Voice and Sing. And these are some of the lyrics. It was written by James Weldon Johnson, and then it was later set to music by his brother, John Rosamond Johnson. So these are some of the lyrics. It says, lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise, high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. And then most importantly, the second stanza I want to stick in your hearts and mind. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed? We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past to now we stand at last where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. I hope that you enjoy this piece, and I also advise people that we anchor ourselves in great action items. Read books like Where Do We Go From Here by Martin Luther King, so that we anchor ourselves in literature and also in music and art, so that moving forward, as we come out as the cultural ambassadors of this nation, that we anchor ourselves in better literature that leads us to the corrective action items that would give us a clear path of what we should do working together as allies. Enjoy Lift Every Voice and Sing, and I hope it touches your heart and your mind. Thank you.